It's Scott Turner. Scott, thanks for joining us, man. Good to talk to you.
Hey, bud.
What's
Thanks
up,
for coming
Scott?
on, man.
What's going on, guys? How we doing?
Scott T. What's up, man?
Doing great. So I saw that your dad and your sister have a podcast. By the way, I highly recommend it. I mean, it's, that's talking ball and great stories.
Remind me the name.
It's The Family Business.
The Family Business.
I think it's just started, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's great.
Yeah,
I totally enjoy it.
Yeah, they just started it. They're having a lot of fun doing it. I got on. We recorded it on Monday, and then they released it yesterday. It was a lot of fun, just kind of telling some old stories of times that me and my dad coaching together, or just different things that have happened. But they've had a lot of really good guests. They've had Adam Thielen was on before me. They've had Cam Newton, Troy Aikman was the first guest. Just a lot of different people. Obviously talking about football. And it's just something, my sister lives in LA and my dad's in Del Mar, which is like, north San Diego. So they meet in this studio in Long Beach, which is like halfway between it. They do it like once a week, and they're really something they're enjoying doing. And I think they've done a good job with it, just trying to get some attention
traction
to it and get some. Exactly, as it's starting out, I guess that's kind of how it works.
Well, I saw your episode or some clips, and I was like, "This is great! I got to subscribe to this." And I think it's just really just starting out.
Probably some great stories.
It's great stories, but let's just go back just for a little bit, because I had even forgotten that Scott was here for a few years as the offensive coordinator, and then you can put us back in that era. That was like the weird COVID era, like Washington football team era. Ron first coming here, he brought you from Carolina, and I was looking at it.
Hired by the Redskins. I never coached a game for the Redskins, though. I was hired by the Redskins.
Right.
Coached the football team in 2020, 2021, and then the first year of the Commanders in 2022. And we dealt with a lot of different things. Both we made the playoffs the first year, and it was the bad. We had the NFC East was so bad, but we found a way. And then that was the game where Heineke played against Brady, and we gave them a run for their money. And then 2021, we had a bunch of players that tested positive for COVID. I don't know if you remember this. We had a bunch of guys out, and then because that was people started testing positive even though they've been vaccinated, and then all of a sudden the league just stopped testing people.
Right.
It was us and the Browns got hit by a bunch of people who missed games, and we were right there fighting for a wild card.
Just
and then,
a debacle.
Yeah, what a nightmare.
Just a debacle. What was that like though? Like with Alex? Alex, great career. And then, the comeback story is unbelievable. But can you think, oh, my God, this is one of my first cracks at being offensive coordinator in this league, and I got to deal with this guy, this legend, but who's literally on his last leg.
Yeah.
Like, what were you thinking?
That was my first year being a coordinator, and we had a lot of fun. Alex is just such a smart player, and just tried to play to his strengths where he kind of spread the field out, and we knew we weren't going to push the ball down the field a lot, but we could spread it out, and he's did such a good job of identifying matchups and getting the ball out quick. So just tried to do that, and he was such a good communicator with me of the things that he liked, and even though we didn't like light it up offensively, we were able to function, and I think we were like 6-5-2 or something in the games that he started. Like he did a good job. The one that was crazy is he played for so long. That was his last year playing, but he had back-to-back 300-yard games one against Detroit and the Giants, and that was the first time in his career he'd ever done that, which kind of blew me away. But we enjoyed it. It was definitely a whirlwind experience. I was telling one of our, I was just previously with the Jets. They just let me go this past year, but I was telling one of our coaches this year, because we started 3 quarterbacks, that I've been 4 different teams, 8 years in a row in this league where I've been on the team that I was on. We've started 3 or more quarterbacks.
Wow, that is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been challenging, but
what's that
it
like
is what
for
it is,
you,
part of the
Scott? Because you're a pro's pro now, right? You've been around. To the highest level in college. Schools like Michigan. You were at Pittsburgh. You've coached all around the league. Your dad's connections, your own connections. What's that like when you're let go, and how do you find that next spot? That uncertainty.
Yeah.
What's that like?
It was a little. I came here a year ago after being with the Raiders, and obviously a tough season this past year, and it was a little surprising. I didn't expect it this year. So right now, just gotta talk to people I know in the league and trying to see what's next, trying to see where I can get on, as people kind of put their staffs together. And, it's tough on the families because you got to be potentially move and selling houses, buying houses, everything like that. But, unfortunately, it's part of the business that I signed up for.
What is it?
You haven't sold your house in Ashburn yet, right?
I did actually.
Oh,
yeah,
you did?
Sold it. I kept it. I kept it for 2 years, and then I sold it last, right before this summer, actually, to the person that was renting it. I had bought a house in Vegas, and I sold that house, and then I sold the Virginia house right.
What's part of the
that.
deal? What's it like though? Like when you work with a guy like Ron, who obviously brings you over, and then he has to let you go. It's part of the deal, right? Coaches always say you're kind of hired to be fired. But what's that like? But from a personal standpoint, I mean, it's got to damage the relationship a little bit, no? Or is it just the deal?
Yeah. No, it does. I mean, you're a professional. That year in 2022, we ended up being 8-1, and it was seen as a huge disappointment. And personally, again, a lot of the listeners and a lot of the fans are going to disagree with me. And I know that as the offensive coordinator, you take a lot of brunt of the blame, but I felt like we got everything we could out of that roster, and we had. And I felt like we almost, to a certain extent, overachieved. And I know there were some certain games that, there's calls that I could have wanted back and whatever. So, but then when you get to that deal and you go to 8-1 and you miss the playoffs, and it's the third year of that head coach's regime, it's hard to come back as status quo. And for whatever reason, they felt like I was the issue, so he decided to move on from me. Now, I don't know if you guys remember the record of the team the next year, but
the next
it wasn't
year
8-1,
4-13.
So,
4-13.
Yeah. So, but,
I like how you're pointing that out. I appreciate that. That's good.
There's other factors involved, and then also, and we had a great group of guys, and they competed for me, and it was resilience, and we'd started poorly, and we had a really good stretch in the middle of the season, and then we kind of fell off at the end, and that kept us out of the playoffs. But there was a lot of turnover with the roster after that too, and so but again, like I said, it's part of it. It's part of the business. And if you don't achieve your goals, then certain people, there's going to have to be some change, and people have to answer for it.
How do you think Cliff handled Jayden? Obviously, huge success in the first year, and then this past year it's almost a wash because Jayden only, I think, finished 4 games.
He was hurt the whole year. Yeah.
It was so bizarre. And then my follow-up to that is, how would you coach Jayden?
I don't know. The first part of the first part, I think they did an outstanding job with him, and even Cliff, I thought Cliff did a nice job this past year because again, dealing with all the injuries and the NFL, the margin for error is so small in the NFL, and the year before they kind of caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, obviously the Hail Mary game against the Bears, and then from that moment on, they really took off. And then this next year, it's almost been it was almost the opposite this past season. Everything that could go right in 2020, in 2024 did, everything that could go wrong in 2025 did, and sometimes it just happens that way. And then once stuff starts heading in that certain direction, good or bad, it's hard to pull it back the other way, and I think that they've dealt with that. I think, like I said, they've always, Cliff's done a nice job on offense, no matter who's been in, obviously relative to the skill level, but Jayden, I mean, I think you coach him just like you do any other high level player. You want to get the ball in his hands, and you don't want to put too much on him where, every single play is dependent on him, but, give him the ball, give him the chance to do the things he does well.
What about
throw the ball down the field, extend plays, all those types of things.
What about Scott? It seemed to be a big point of emphasis this year as guys were he's got to be under center more. We need more play action. Can you talk about the pros and cons of that and why that might be beneficial to a guy like Jayden?
Yeah, I think when you play under center, I think you take a little bit of pressure off the quarterback as far as there's a little bit more just straight designed called runs, where in the gun, a lot of the runs are read runs or RPOs where the quarterback has that mental weight of making a decision every single play. Sometimes it's good for those guys to have a breather play of being under center, hand the ball off. And then the play action from under center, you get a lot more reaction from the defense. Now, now the other part of it though is like everyone says that about Cliff, but that's not Cliff's offense, and they brought Cliff in to run his offense. So, and he's been very successful in what he's done with the shotgun stuff. And like we were a high shotgun percentage team early when I was in Washington. We kind of transitioned, I think, because like with Heineke, like he needed to see it, so like he needed to be kind of out and away from it, you know, a little bit. And certain guys need that. So I think, you know, nowadays the NFL, everyone wants to run the Shanahan-McVay system, which is under center play action. It's hard to argue with that because they've had a lot of success, but that doesn't necessarily fit everyone. And Washington, I mean, what were they, third in the league, fourth in the league in rushing?
Big.
Yeah. So like, you know, it's not like there weren't results. You know, I think a lot of the issue was, you know, the defense was giving up a lot of points, so they ended up having to play from behind a decent amount, and it just kind of got a little out of whack. But I think there's different ways to do it. Obviously, what's really popular right now, and what a lot of the league is running, is what you're saying, the under center, you know, play action system.
Scott, is it risky to hire, especially when you had a bad season with Dan Quinn had a bad season, but most of it was because of injuries. Is it risky to hire a young, you know,
OC
coach who hasn't been an OC before? He's been a quarterback coach.
I mean, a half hour ago, he was the assistant quarterback coach.
Right. So is it risky to do that? Even I'm sure David Blau, he knows offense. I know that. But is it risky as a head coach to bring in a guy who hasn't done it before?
I think there's always risk involved, no matter what decision you make. Yeah, of course, you can look at that and say, hey, you know, we're coming off a poor season. Like we know we need to improve this next year. But I know Dan Quinn. I've never worked with him, but you know, I've met him and spoken with him many times, and you know, he knows what he's doing. And I know I've worked with some guys this past year at the Jets that were with David Blau in Detroit as a player and also you know, as a coach. And you know, they speak very highly of him, and you know, it was only a matter of time before he's getting this opportunity. And I think he's got a great it seems like he's got a great relationship with the players on offense, especially the quarterback. And if they were around him, they've been around him, and if they feel like he's the right guy to lead the offense, then I think you got to have faith in it and go forward, as opposed to like, because you know, the risk involved is that he's young, right, and he's inexperienced. Well, but you could bring somebody in that's been an offensive coordinator and then runs their system, but you bring them in, and now the whole offense has to learn a whole brand new system, and they have to build a relationship with somebody, and so there's a risk involved there too, you know. And I'm sure that when Dan Quinn was making this decision, that you know, he weighed the pros and cons, and I'm sure he felt strongly about you know, David Blau and what he brought to the offense, and that's why he decided to do what he decided to do.
Hey, so again, your dad and your sister's podcast is The Family Business, and I really just think that's going to be really interesting for football fans. Great stories there. One story you told before, I'd like to get your take on the Super Bowl, on your little breakdown of the Pats and Seahawks, but I know that you're close with Diggs, and you told a great story about recruiting Diggs and all that. Can you share that with our audience? Like
Stefon Diggs, right?
Yes, yeah. And when you first met him and all that, and talk about recruiting the WCAC. Jason and I are both the Matha guys, so we have a lot of WCAC, the Matha pride. But just tell that story. Yeah,
for sure. So Stefon, you know, when I just become the receiver coach at the University of Pittsburgh. I'd been a GA the 2 years prior to that, and so I had because I went to Oakton High School, and from the DMV, they gave me this area for recruiting. So I met Good Counsel, and they were the best team in the league, and at the time. And Kevin McFadden was the security, like he was the head of security at Good Counsel, but he was basically in charge of like the recruiting of players. So I go into the school, and and this was, I think it was like in January. Well, it doesn't matter. And so I go into the school, and they had just had a Lou Young who went to Georgia Tech, was a senior, and he was like, whatever, he was leaving school, he committed to Georgia Tech, and Kevin McFadden was like, hey, why don't you sit down? He put the DVD in of their highlight tape. So so the highlight tape for the whole season, like every third play, this number 7 is just making this unbelievable plays. Number 7 on tape. So And he had introduced me to like 10 kids at the school already that were upcoming seniors that were possible recruits, for us. And then so I just assumed that number 7 was Lou Young. And then like 15 plays in the highlight tape, number 1 makes the play. He's like, oh, that's Lou. He's going to Georgia Tech. And I'm like, well, who's number 7 then? And he's like, well, that's Diggs. And I was like, well,
I'm recruiting him now.
Yeah, that's my guy.
I said you've introduced me to every kid in this school, and I haven't met him. Like, what? I want to meet him. Yeah. And then he was like, well, Bob Malloy, he was like a legendary coach in the area. He was the head coach at the time, and he was like, well, Coach Malloy, he doesn't want Diggs to talk to any colleges yet, not until he gets his grades up, because he had some issues academically. He had just finished his sophomore year.
Right.
That was his sophomore season. And I'm like, look, I'm not leaving here until I meet this kid.
Right.
Like I'm not. So they brought him down, and I talked to him, and I actually offered him a scholarship verbally, and that was his first scholarship offer. He didn't have any offers because they were kind of keeping the colleges away from him. So, and then so then I would come back in spring recruiting, and I would go there, probably more than I was allowed to by the NCAA, and I would
check on him,
and I would just. Yeah, he was running track, so I'd walk around the track with him, talk to him, and I really built a good relationship with him. And
didn't you say later he got like 80 offers? You were the first.
Yeah, so I was the first, and then he like hit the camp circuit like prior to his junior year, and then he had like by the time his junior football season started, he had like basically everyone in the country, 80 or 90 offers, and he was supposed to go to Ohio State with Urban Meyer, and he didn't. He ended up staying with Locksley does such a great job of. He was offensive coordinator at the time, but keeping those guys,
talk
those
about
DMV
Zimmer,
guys at home.
about how Zimmer the draft.
So fast forward. So then I was that was 1 year at Pitt. So I go to the NFL. I was at the Carolina Panthers, and anyway, bouncing around. And then I'm at the fast forward to the draft. It was 2015 draft, and I was the quarterback coach of the Vikings, and and Diggs was coming out, and I was the quarterback coach. We had drafted Teddy Bridgewater the year before. And I'm telling anyone that can listen, like, we need to get this guy on the team. But he was only been at Maryland for 3 years. He had hurt 2 of them, but I'm like, this guy is wired the right way. Like, we want this guy. And he had gotten in a little bit of nothing off the field, but whatever. He had a couple of injuries, so his draft status was knocked down, and we had him on the board, then took him off, and then he dropped all the way to the 5th round, and they pulled me in the draft room, and I'm like, well, I know we're not drafting a quarterback, and Zim was like, who's a kind of a gruff guy, and he was like, hey, Scott, if we draft this Diggs kid, you're gonna make sure he doesn't screw it up. And I'm like, Coach, just get him on our team, and he did, and then obviously the rest is history. He's had a great career, and at different spots. I mean, obviously he's a Minnesota Viking legend for the play against the Saints, in the playoffs, and and we just have kept in touch over the years, just, when we played each other, and he's just a guy that, I got a lot of respect for, just the way he approaches football. He's the ultimate competitor. So I'm excited for him that, because obviously he had some setbacks in his career, and I'm excited for him that he's in the Super Bowl, because we go back a long way.
Scott, we're running out of time. We'll have to get you on again.
Yeah, you're awesome.
Well, real quick, who do you like, Pats or Seahawks?
I think it's going to be a tough one. I think the Seahawks are probably more complete, but I mean the Patriots. You can't argue with what they've been doing. And I really enjoyed it, guys. Anytime. I'd love to chat with you guys.
Appreciate it, man.
Stuff, man.
Scott Turner, former Commanders offensive coordinator. Best of luck in the future, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
Appreciate you guys.
Yep.
All right, bud.
Yep, that was Scott Turner. He was great. Hopefully, we'll have him on at a future date. Coming up next, Ashley Garland, attorney and legal analyst. She's covering the Brendan Banfield trial. We'll pick her brain next.